So, hello, everyone. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about complaints. And I'm not sure why I chose this topic. It's just been on my mind. I think maybe because the reason I chose this topic is because I'm all about having compassion for all of our parts. But I think complaining is a part of me and a part of other people that I'm still working to completely have compassion for. I'm just going to talk off the top of my head here a minute, and then I want to engage you guys. So I think I view complaints, and what I mean by complaints is somebody speaking either internally to themselves or out loud about something they wish were different than it is. And I believe we all have feelings about things that are different than they are, and some of them are petty and some of them are really significant. But I think over the years I've been annoyed or troubled by how often people just are habitually complaining. There's some people that just this isn't right or that isn't right, and they're not even, or why didn't that happen, or gee, you should have taken that parking space, you missed that one, or why are you cooking that so long? There's just this sort of irritability, energy, and I want to work today to have more compassion, all of us to have more compassion for that part, because I really intellectually believe that when we're complaining, there's a pain there. We're in pain, but we're not empowering ourselves to be assertive, to be direct. We're just sort of, I call it dribbling the anger out the side of your mouth, like sometimes you don't know you're dribbling food, you don't even know you're doing it. So first thing I want to do with you all is, would you write in the chat? So see if you know how to get to the chat. And I'm gonna look and read some of them out loud. Write your associations to the word complaint. Just what pops into your head. I just shared a few of mine. Just your off the top thoughts about complaints. So low-grade blaming, irritation, that I shouldn't have them, like I shouldn't have complaints, frustration. Yeah, these are good. This bothers me. Okay. My own complaints, I'm uncomfortable with something in myself. So I'm seeing discomfort with others. Non-acceptance. Complaint is that the thing that is troublesome is happening to begin with. It's sort of like, this shouldn't be happening. Yeah, that's one of my definitions. Also, irresponsibility, weakness, helplessness. Some part of me is unhappy. I'm too needy of attention. Whining, don't want to be, it shouldn't be. Yeah, I agree with all of these things you guys are writing. Not satisfied. So let's feel into our own version then of, first of all, myself as the complainer. I can't do anything about this. I think that's a very common feature with complaining. It's very often comes from that. I'm going to say either early childhood experience or the I'll call it the experience or the belief that grows through experience in life that my voice isn't going to be heard. Like if you really trusted your voice was going to be heard, you would probably speak in a different way about your need. So a complaint is, I've called it a want in disguise. It's like if I were more secure and confident, I would just express my want and just let the chips fall where they may. But there's this insecure part of me and it's not conscious, but it's like, my voice isn't going to be heeded anyway. So I'll just throw my assertion out in the laziest, I'll call it the laziest possible way. I don't have the inner strength to speak it or the inner confidence to speak it with that kind of vulnerability that says, here's a want. This is just me with my want. So let's feel into what's true for each of us about this. And it seems like some of us, when we think of ourselves as the complainer, it looks, when I read these things, that there is some ability to feel compassion for that part of you, but also I know for myself, I kind of minimize. I'll minimize the importance of a complaint. I'll think it's petty, that type of thing. But what I want us to do today is just take another look at what it is for you. And now I want to add a show of hands, and then maybe I'll have some comments come from you before we go on. First, show of hands. How many people are aware that you complain more than you would like to? Either out loud or to yourself, either one. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. And how many people, you can raise your hand both times, feel like you get more complaints from another person important to you, or just from people more than you'd like to? How many people feel you're on the receiving end of complaints more than you'd like to be? Some of us are frustrated both ways, and some of us are only raise our hand once there. So we're just beginning to develop our witnessing capacity here, the ability to actually realize, oh, complaints either coming at me or being delivered by me or being just inside my own mind. These things are something I can witness. Now, before I go any further, I would just like to hear, like speak up. If you have something to share or to ask the group or to bring forth here. Anybody have anything yet?
When you ask for...
Go ahead, Dex.
Okay, so when you ask for anything, I'm not sure, you mean in regard to what you've said so far?
Yeah, or your own insight about your own complaining or receiving. Just what's coming up for you right now?
I'm interested to notice my complaints and then pay attention to what it is that I'm needing, and then how to ask for that in a way that and that's what I'm curious about, is how to ask for what I want in a way that can be received.
That's always a good practice, I think, is whenever you hear yourself complaining, because apparently we all have the capacity to kind of notice that type of energy. That type of energy has it seems like hidden assumption that you're kind of against me, that you're not going to welcome my request. See, I don't know if that fits. Can you own that? There's a kind of like assumption of unfriendliness or something when somebody's complaining to me or I'm complaining to another.
Well, I've noticed that
yeah.
My request has been met with pushback. So I'm wondering how to put my request in a way that can be received and not pushed back against.
Yeah, good. That's a good question. So let's, if you're willing, let's dialogue about this. Can you think of a specific?
Yes.
This is you putting yourself on the spot here, but that would be great because we'll all learn.
Yeah.
Specific situation. Tell us the situation and
okay,
what you delivered and what you got back, and we'll help you, Dex.
Okay, my friend sometimes gets high or drunk, and then what I want is connection, and I just can't. The quality of connection is just gone. It's like I can't really connect with my friend, and like it's somebody else there. It's not my friend, and I don't know how. I've let them know what it's like for me, but the pattern just keeps on repeating.
Okay, so when I hear you say I've let them know what that's like for me, ideally what that would look like is something, you and I can work this out, but I think this is probably something you're able to do because I know you, Dex, is when I walked in the room the other day and I was hoping to connect, I realized that you'd gotten high already, and I felt a contraction in myself, and I kind of already jumped to the conclusion that you weren't going to be very available for me. Now, there's more to this, but would you own that you already, before you even anything, before there was any interaction, that you would have, oh no, this person's high, they're not going to be able to connect. Did you have that preconception?
No, it was more when I actually was trying to connect that it was like my friend wasn't there.
Okay. So then you would forget that part then. You would just say when I tried to get a conversation going, what did you do to try to connect? So then let's hear what you did do to try to connect.
Well, this most recent time, I didn't do anything because I was already, I did not know how to connect. Like I really wanted to connect, and I'd already recognized that having this kind of an aware conversation wasn't possible with my friend high. Like,
yeah.
So I've waited, and I haven't yet tried to reconnect and say what my experience was.
Okay, so if you were to try, let's assume that I'm your friend. We'll do a little role play here.
Yeah,
and you felt completely safe to say this.
Yeah.
Take a breath and center yourself. And then those of us who are listening, maybe think about how you would behave in Dexter's situation, and let's bring forth some empathy for Dexter here.
Yeah, I'd say yesterday when we were connecting, you let me know that you were high. And we were in a we were conversing. I really wanted to connect with you, and I didn't know how to I just didn't feel like you were there in a way that was available for connecting.
Okay, I'm just gonna role play this. We're gonna do we'll do some other kind of work in a little while, but let's just. So what did I exhibit that gave you the impression I wasn't available for connecting?
I'm trying to remember now. When I can't remember exactly what happened. So I'm going to say when I'm sorry, Susan, I can't.
That's okay.
I can't remember exactly what happened.
I think
it was something like I started a line of communication. I said something and you weren't tracking what it was that I was saying.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a good example of a complaint, and I want to work with you a little more on this, do more like trigger work with it in a minute. But first, just for all of us witnessing, there's a discrepancy between how this person behaves and how I'd like them to behave. And that's what we're working with. And sometimes that's an easy discrepancy to hold. It's like, oh, I'm not getting what I want here. Let me just like be with my own frustration without the idea that the world should treat me any differently than it does. There is the coming from a more witnessing, more distant from the emotional part of the interaction. So there's that way of working with it, which is just, man, this is kind of an uncomfortable discrepancy. I'm not good at, for me, it might be, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at holding these kinds of discrepancies, especially with this person who's so important to me. And so just kind of owning that and being able to be with that. So that's one level of vulnerability, just owning that there's value in being with these kinds of discrepancies for our own growth, but also admitting, gee, this feels quite painful. And so, bringing ourselves tenderness at that level. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other level, which is inner child type work, which I'd like to do a little of that with you, and you don't have to say much, but in fact, maybe I'll bring everybody kind of into it. If you can put yourself in Dexter's place of wanting connection, I imagine we've all wanted connection, and somehow the other person doesn't, just kind of like what Dexter said, I throw out a bid for connection, the other person doesn't respond. And so I'm sitting with this discrepancy, but it's got a specific feeling tone to it. And so what I want to do now is and by the way, Dex, when you kind of can't remember the details, it not that everybody's supposed to remember details, but it's a little more likely that you've kind of come into the situation already feeling unsafe. You know what I mean? Even though you were doing your best, but you weren't completely relaxed. So, your mind was somewhat in the trigger reaction.
Can I say something about that?
Yes, please.
So I know that I can't have this conversation when my friend is high. I have to have it afterwards.
Yeah.
And I don't, I guess I'm uncertain that there's a shared acknowledgement of the circumstance that when my friend is high, that he can't really be available. Like he just seems to me, I guess I have the belief that he's under so much stress, he doesn't want to give that up.
Well, he might say, and as common in these kind of interactions, Dex, that's in your imagination. You're making that up. I'm available to you when I'm high. At least most of the time, I was that time. Like I feel sometimes like I'm even more available when I'm high, or something. People might say stuff like that, and you don't have a shared reality.
That's very, very, very accurate.
Yeah. This is. I think many of us have been on one end or the other of this conversation. So thanks for bringing this in. So it's not about getting shared reality. You don't have it. And where addictions are concerned, it's not something you can just reason with somebody, no matter how much they love you, they may not be able to entertain the idea of not ever getting high around you or whatever, what I mean? We're dealing with addictive behaviors here. So this is not like something where rational problem solving is necessarily going to be your ally. What we're going to do here is look at what you can learn about yourself from situations where life gives you A and you really would prefer B, and you're pretty sure that B would be a better option for both of us, like connecting. B, I want connecting. But what life is giving me is this person who can't even acknowledge that his behavior interferes with connecting. So that's what life gives you. So being able to witness and name those kind of gaps, those kind of discrepancies, I think that's the first lesson about complaining. And where's the assumption coming from that I should have my way? Well, it can be coming from a lot of different places, but let's start with the place that distorts your ability to cope with reality. And that means your trigger reaction. It's not that the trigger reaction is bad or wrong. Trigger just means it's painful to a part of myself, to a tender part of myself.
Yeah.
It's all it means.
If I want to connect and I can't, then I just want to leave.
Yeah. And wanting to leave is what we call a reactive behavior. And I always
or attack. I could attack too.
Or you could attack. Yeah, you could criticize or complain or whatever. Yeah. So these reactive behaviors are automatic reactions to triggering. And so I'm always counseling people, feel what you feel rather than taking action right away. because almost always, whatever that action is, yelling or criticizing or grumbling or walking out and either saying out loud or to yourself, this is not working. Those actions rob you of the experience of being with a very important part of yourself we don't want to leave out of the equation. So it's the pain of wanting to connect and the other person doesn't seem to be there. We could argue, they could argue, yes, I'm there, but if it doesn't seem that way to you, then that's your pain and you get to have it. And there's some kind of meaning in this pain, even if it is based on a little bit of a distorted perception. Let's not even worry about that exactly right now, because we're now going to go into, wow. And I walked out of that room feeling, I said something, he says something back, and I walked out of that room feeling how, Dex? Just share some of the both emotional type feelings and the bodily sensations. What was that like?
Bodily sensations, I felt jittery inside. I felt confused. Well, I guess, yeah, I definitely felt unsettled, that jitteriness. And this was telling myself this is hopeless. Like I can't, this is not working. There's no way that it can work.
Yeah, so just for our witnesses here too, these are the reactive stories. So you're helping us get practice at mapping a trigger reaction. So there's something that happens that doesn't meet our needs. Then there's the feeling of jittery. I mean, I don't know what the order is, Then there's this is hopeless. What am I going to do now? Type of thought. And so as you get into that, if you witness that as if, like you're having a memory, but you're also witnessing it like a movie on a screen, just like the rest of us are with you, Dex. We're witnessing you on the screen. And most of us are feeling some identification, some empathy with that frustration, that pain, that what am I going to do now? And that tendency to want to just give up, that hopeless feeling. So just be with that. That's the medicine here, is there's this pain. And I have this tendency always to just start touching my heart and my belly. I instinctively do that. And so many of my clients instinctively do that when they're in pain. It's like the counselor doesn't have to teach people to do that, although sometimes I will suggest it, like I'm doing now, because it's symbolic of the nurturing part of you bringing comfort and tenderness to the hurting part of you. This is the reparenting for some pain that we don't even have to know all the original reasons for this pain. It's obviously every one of us at various times in our life have had needs, and the environment hasn't been attuned to us. So now we're talking about attunement. And I'm going to assume, Dex, that you, like most of us, had somebody around who wasn't perfectly attuned to you as you're growing up. And whether that's true or not, just kind of imagine, here I am with my need to connect, and now with that jittery feeling and that hopeless kind of thought feeling. Here I am. And this is a part of me. This is a valid part of me that gets to feel this. And if I can let myself feel some of the pain of that, what I do is I train myself to tolerate this kind of pain with empathy toward myself, so that I'm not so freaked out when the world doesn't give me what I want. We're training ourselves to be able to be with and work with, and ultimately we could just say tolerate a life where there's these kind of discrepancies between what I want and what I get. But the work, tolerate, sounds, like you're sort of denying your needs. The work is really hearing your own needs and hearing them as valid. Mm-hmm. So just like, this need to connect, just feel and be tender toward that need in you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you were to say anything toward that need, it's not necessary to speak, but I have you as a pretty verbal guy. Is there anything you'd say to that tender?
Yeah, I'd say that's so sweet. I love that that part of me that wants to connect, and it's really a sweet, valuable. I love that about me. I love that about me. Yeah.
So I want to give people a chance now to notice what you're feeling as you're witnessing Dex. And maybe even some of you are identifying in some way with his predicament here. Or maybe you've just got some questions for me. Can I open it up to other people now?
Yeah.
Thank you. We might come back, but that was so lovely to work with you in this way.
Yeah, thank you.
Have you follow along. Any comments of any sort from people? One would be what you were going through yourself while listening to Dex. Yeah, please tell us, Terry.
Well, thank you, Dex, also for sharing and being vulnerable enough to go ahead and share, because sometimes I'm not brave enough or courageous enough to share what I really want to feel. And that's probably part of the reason why I have the feelings that I do. And as you were speaking, when you said it's really fear and not feeling safe, that I thought, wow, that's an eye opener, because at times I think that's what I feel, is that I have that fear. And again, I'm, like I mentioned before, courage enough to say what I really want instead of complaining about what I want to the other person. And like you were saying, just listen to your own needs and connect with those feelings, which is so important, because I've been working on this for a very long time, not wanting to complain. Because one time someone told me, Terry, when you complain, it's also a type of an affirmation that you're putting out into the world, into the universe, into others, instead of actually specifically saying what you want because of what you feel. You're just complaining about it, and it's going out there into the whatever you want to call it, universe, into others that are hearing you and listening to what you're saying. And that really isn't, they told me this is like a prayer. You're kind of like praying in your complaints.
Cool. That's so cool what you said.
Yeah. And then when they told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's when it really just triggered, just hit me, and that I have to change this. This is not who I am. This is a product of what I've learned as a child and how I was treated and mistreated. But I can change that now, because of course I'm an adult. I can start to recognize these things. So thank you so much, Dex, for sharing, because as you were just speaking, and even not being able to express some of the things that occurred at the time, it was like, gosh, it's just so it kind of just fascinates me, our behavior, as humans, and the way we react to things. And like you were saying about, at the times when we're going through these things and we're being triggered, it's because of it touches a painful part of ourselves, you know, either from childhood or wherever it is, or from that person that triggers that, you know, holding back. And because Dex, I would do the same thing. I would just walk away. I don't want to argue about it. That my energy is depleted. I'm done. And that's not really true. I'm not done, especially with that person. It's just that I'm just feeling that way. I'm feeling not safe, not heard, and I'm letting it go. But so yes, a lot of things did resonate for me. Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing and explaining about this.
Thank you, Terry. Nancy, did you have something to share?
Yeah. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Oh, that was so rich. Yeah, it brought up a lot of feelings for me because Dex, by you giving the example, and Susan, you slowing it all down so much. It was like taking a thing that's instant for me and just like, whoa, slow it down. Thank you for walking through that picture by picture in my mind, how I do it. The thing, Dex, that really moved me was that I love that part of myself. That was, thank you for that. Just melted. Anyway, it's a great exercise. Thank you both.
Thanks, Nancy. Marielle, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I want to appreciate Dexter for your vulnerability and willingness, and Susan for your input. What I notice about, I mean, it was very touching and I could feel it in my body. And I notice when I complain, it's only to people I feel safe with. And I remember complaining to my mother-like manager and watching myself. Like, I went on and on for about a minute, and then I noticed, wow, I'm complaining to her, and she really listened, and it opened me up. And I believe in conscious complaining to let something go. So I know, it was okay that I was complaining. But then the next thing that happened is she offered me a solution. And it wasn't long after that I started to feel emotionally kind of off, like I don't deserve to get a promotion. And it was so interesting. It's like my lower self wanted to complain and be heard, but I wasn't quite willing to move into something that could actually fulfill or fill that need. So just becoming aware of my areas where I limit myself. And but there is some real value to complaining to someone who I feel safe with. And I'm just like, I know they're for me. Then it's just like, oh, I'm freer, So anyway, that's
you had a couple of good, really, really good points there. One is the insight you had about yourself, where I'm not quite ready to really ask for in an open way or have what I want. I'm only able to get the complaint out. And, that reminds me of child development. When children are in the age right around the terrible twos, where they say no a lot and they're just learning that they're a separate individual. If you've been a parent, you might be able to remember that time. You probably can't remember when you were two, but children learn to say no before they learn to say what they actually do want, because developmentally that takes less complexity, less energy. Can you kind of see how that is? You can, like, if you're trying to get the truth from somebody, give them a multiple choice rather than asking them to say what they want. It's developmentally, or if they're anxious about expressing their wants, it's just much easier to just, point to an answer rather than come up with, this is what I want. So I just want to kind of normalize where you're at with that, at least sometimes, Marielle, that isn't that weird. Okay. I mean, you might have thought, oh man, you're really, messed up or something.
Yes.
But you're on a path here, and just being able, I'll just say, just being able to bitch about it, step on the way to be able to actually vulnerably ask for what you want.
Oh, that's what I needed. Thank you. It's
the
okay to be bitch.
The other thing I got from what you shared that I want to highlight for people is, there can be a thing called conscious complaining, and we often know it as venting. I often will, teach couples in my office, let your partner know if you just need 5 minutes to vent, but set the context, hey, can I have, 5 minutes of your attention? And you don't have to do anything or fix it. That's something you didn't want, is somebody to fix it. I just need to blow off some steam, because in a way, complaining is kind of like venting, at least for many of us. And so it's like, it makes it safe, because people don't generally like to be complained at, but when they know they're doing you a service, and they're just like, oh, she's given me time to kind of have a different mindset, that I'm not supposed to do anything. It's not about me. I mean, that somehow has to get across there. This is just, once I say these things, I'll experience some relief, and I'll be so grateful to you for holding that space for me. It's that kind of an attitude. Okay, any other comments, questions? So I want to just kind of go back to, what are some of the things that you guys find yourself complaining about? Just kind of bring more people into it. Just think about it for a second. Like Dex, it had to do with connection, And maybe some people would put something in the chat, like politics. Yes. And this is, I think I want to say something about this, because I did one of these free webinars one time on COVID culture wars, to vax or not to vax. It's on YouTube. And often the political scene is a great projection screen for our relationship to power. And what came up in that call was somebody, we worked with a person's reaction to the idea that there was a lot of pressure for people to get vaccinated. And some jobs were saying you can't come into the office if you're not vaccinated, and so forth. And so I worked with one man, and it basically boiled down to abuse of power. His complaint was, there's abuse of power here. And when we worked it to his childhood, we found his relationship to an irrational authority, i.e. his father, who was an alcoholic and who did sometimes sort of trap him in situations where he had no choice. And so I just want to say that politics can be a good projection screen, not that it's not also about the actual situation, because there are life-affirming decisions that politicians make, and destructive, life-destroying decisions that politicians make. And I think there is in the universe a kind of a ultimate accounting system that that we should all be leaning into. I was going to say pro-life, but I don't want to use that term because that's got political implications here. But that if you're in touch with the laws of the universe, you're in harmony with life, and you're trying to discover how to be in harmony with the laws of life, you know. So to me, you know, there are values and ethics and right wrong in the universe, but the universe takes care of that part. Politics can be a wonderful projection screen for like my issues around authority. So I'm just inviting us, because elections are coming up. Those of us who are watching the news are possibly quite concerned with how elections are being run and so forth and so on. So, you know, that brings up fear and threat and caring for something, and possibly feeling powerless, like you did when you were little. So that, okay, here's another one. Friends, when they report problems or won't take any action or responsibility. So that's another kind of thing that can cause an internal complaint in me. Like they keep coming and talking to me about this, and they even ask for my advice and seem to really want it and walk away, you know, seeming to take my advice. But do they ever change their life? No, I hear the same problem the next time I talk to them. So yeah, what would be the trigger if that were your complaint? People who don't take any action on their problems, let's say, if you had that complaint, what would be that core need inside of you? So what I want to show you is that your reaction to any external situation can be a mirror of something deep and important to know about yourself. So when I think about people who don't take action, my trigger would be, I think probably two things. One would be a little bit of frustration with my father, who would talk about his frustrations at work. He was a manager, and he wanted to tell his bosses that the people below him needed some changes in the way the company was being run. I mean, he saw things that the top management couldn't see, but he would always come home and complain about, gee, they're doing this and they're not doing that. And I would say to him, Dad, why don't you tell your VP for sales and marketing, because he was in sales. Why don't you tell your VP what you're seeing, what your insights are? And he never could. He'd always give me some excuse. I remember one time he said, no, they would just tell me, we've got a good product, be a team player, don't be negative, bring us solutions, don't bring us problems. And if anybody out here has lived in the corporate world, especially during the 50s, 60s, and 70s, things may be changing now, but that is top management's typical reaction to anybody telling them they're doing something wrong. So, but I would get really frustrated with my dad. And when I go deeper into that, it's because I wanted so much to just like and respect everything about him. He was such a good person and an admirable person to me, except in that one way. And I felt pain. As I'm thinking of it now, I can remember, I just felt pain that I want to be able to respect him. And at that age, I was like a mid-teenager, 15 years old. I didn't know that you could love and respect somebody even when they're not when they've got big gaps in their own personal development. So it's like that. People not taking good advice, like from their daughter, brings that up in me, that difficulty respecting somebody like that. And That happened to be my dad. So I don't know how I would deal with that. I'm not in that situation right now. Anybody else in that situation where you try to give somebody advice and they just don't, or help them and they just can't or don't? Now let me see what else here. Lots of internal complaining in the work context that I don't share. Yeah, like how my supervisor talks to me, or that I'm given too much work without any acknowledgement. Yeah, the whole business corporate context has its own norms and rules, and so we want to be aware of those. But on the other hand, I think once we've done our trigger work, our internal work, to have more compassion for that for that judgmental, impatient, hurting part of myself, whatever that part of myself is. I honestly believe that when you would go to your supervisor, you would come from a different place, because you'd be more in touch with your tenderness around this issue, and you probably wouldn't come across as unfriendly or indignant or whatever other feelings might be there. So I'm always recommending, when you have one of these situations, do what you need to do to inquire into the pain in you about that, and give a little bit more attention and empathy to that pain in you. And somehow that shifts the energy when you go back and try to talk to somebody. I don't know, Lisa. I don't know your company, but I don't know how safe it would be to do that. But at least doing a little more inner work could be helpful on it. Dex.
So when you say get in touch with the pain, my personal experience is the pain points to some unmet need, and it's more connecting with the unmet need that's underneath the pain.
Yes.
That's really where the treasure is.
Yes, the pain is like really
the symptom.
Fear. The pain is the fear that need is not going to get met.
Yeah.
So the boss won't listen to me, or I'll be punished. I'll be seen as somebody who is negative, like my father was afraid of. So and the real need underneath that is here. I mean, for most people, the need in this situation has something to do with, I need to feel that my needs matter. I need to feel that there's space for my voice in this relationship.
Yeah, and when you directed me to hold myself, and I got to really appreciate the beauty of wanting connection and having connection, then that really shifted the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
like I saw the beauty. And even though I don't still have an answer about how I can get it in this situation, I experience having that beautiful want. And even though I don't, in the circumstance, I don't feel it met, I do feel somehow something alive in me and whole and wonderful.
Yeah, and possibly, Dex, this is maybe bordering on advice for you. I could try this on. Maybe if you simply shared some of the inquiry that you did on this here Zoom call with this person, say, I'm not attached I'm not attached to just seeing it as I need connection and you're not available. I went deeper with my need for connection, and I felt the pain around that, and I'm able to tolerate that pain a little better. And I want you to know that I'm working on this. I don't want to abandon our friendship. I'm still looking at my own inner way of holding that, so that you really do, to get true trust and intimacy, there has to be enough inner work to take away the "you should be different" story. And that's hard to do when it's like, well, geez, I want connection. And how do we have a relationship if we don't have connection? This person should be different. So I'm suggesting that no, that should is just part of your reaction. And what's most real is your need and your pain about not getting that need met. And that's what needs to be communicated. But as long as there's that "you should be different" energy, it sets up a power struggle dynamic, where they're defending themselves. Even if you don't think you're attacking, they're in a defense. In that article that I wrote for my newsletter, I was writing this thing about complaining, and then as I got to the end of writing, and I went, whoops, what about people who are defensive, who are always defending themselves? And the most common reactive cycle in intimate relationships is one person either criticizes or complains or is going after something, and the other person is feeling like judged or not good enough, or like I got to get away from this because it's kind of overwhelming. This other person's needs are kind of overwhelming to me. And so they go on the defense. So then the more that person kind of goes on the defense and says, well, I am always available to you, Dex, that would be a defensive reaction. And then you'd go, well, you think you are, but no, you're not. And so forth and so on. And so that complain, defend cycle is so that's what I mean by a power struggle. It's so common, and it often is subtle enough so that you don't realize that. And if you're a couple or a good friendship, being able to step outside of that cycle and witness it and go, I think we're in one of those vicious cycles where the more I pursue, the more you withdraw, and the more you withdraw, the more I pursue, and so forth. So keep our eye on these things. And the two big developmental tasks for human evolution, I think right now, are both the need to step above the level of the problem and witness the reactive cycle, witness, all the reactions that are personal, and also go deeper into the pain. It's like humanity has been able to live, sort of within this range. I think we have to broaden the range here, get both higher and deeper in our ability to cope with human emotions and differences in people. So good luck out there. Yeah, there's plenty of grist for the mill here. I didn't know what was going to come up today, but I so appreciate all of you for your contributions.
Thank you, Susan. Good to be with you.
Myself.
Here.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Susan.
Bye-bye.
Bye.